Guten Tag, my guitar friends, all three of you, or is it what, 86, 7 subscribers I have now? Anyway, so I guess there's at least someone's watching this. So, this is Dita here. So, Dita's going to talk about brands, I know, and what's really in a name. Because as much as Dita says, you know, in his videos, forget the name. And I really do mean it, forget the name. I know most of you care about the name. So I'm going to talk about the name. Now, I only talk about guitars I've tried. So I will say that these guitars, from my experience, and I've tested a lot of guitars, okay? Now, I have 28 guitars, and you say, well, why do you have 28 guitars? Well, I'm not married, I don't have kids, it's a passion. And the reason I have them, and I haven't traded them away, they're all different, and they're all good at what they do. So even if I don't get around to playing one on it realistically for a year, sometimes, when I pick it up, I go, yeah, that's why I got it. So you don't have to be like me. I said in another video, if you want to be a serious player and play the bass, you need 4 guitars. We don't count the thumb. Or 3. And, you know, that's if you want to be a good all-round guitar player. So anyway, I know that a lot of you care about names. So this is my experience, you know, 30 years of looking at guitars and fooling around with them and owning them. And I've sold very few. So when I say this brand is generally good, because in my experience, I've never found a bad one. And if I've seen one that wasn't up to scratch, it's usually because it was bought and the owner neglected it, didn't look after it properly, or it wasn't looked over properly and set up properly when it was traded in at a shop, okay? So, like I said before, you have to take everything with a grain of salt, and I encourage you to, if you don't know about guitars, learn about guitars, and if you're looking for a guitar, and you're not sure, and you got between 3 maybe brands, and the brand name is swaying you, take someone who actually knows about guitars and hopefully isn't too biased, okay? That's my advice. So, I've never seen a bad one of these. Anything by Godin, it's just a fact. Their electrics, you're pretty safe with anything, I think, from the Godin Guitar Company. Not everyone will be perfect. Like I said, if it's a used one, you have to, any used guitar you have to check out. But generally, the ones I've seen new from the factory, they've all been good. So the Godin brand is Godin guitars, Norman guitars, Seagull guitars, Art and Lutherie guitars, Simon & Patrick guitars, and La Patrie guitars. Now La Patrie used to be their nylon string classicals, and I think they've dropped that and just call them Godin now, okay? So if you have a nylon string that says La Patrie, you can feel confident that's a Godin product, probably a decent guitar, okay? The Ferk I don't own. I've looked at them, and I looked at about 5, and they're good, okay? New ones I've seen. Larrivee, I haven't seen a bad one, okay? Yamaha, I haven't seen a bad one. Yari, I haven't seen a bad one. Alvarez, I can't say I've seen a bad one. But in my experience, the Yaris are a step above. They're like the high-end Alvarez. So don't poo-poo Alvarez. I would just check them out a little more carefully, perhaps, than a Yari. But I would check everything out carefully, to be honest. Collings, the ones I've tried are nice. Michel Pellegrin, very nice. They start around 14,000. They should be nice. Jaime Julia, they're around 6 now. That's a top of the line. Alhambras, again, they're very good. They're like the Godin of Spain. Now, Almansa I never used to like, but they were recently bought by Alhambra. So if you have an Almansa, A-L-M-A-N-S-A, nylon that's recent, now I don't know how recently, you'd have to check that out. They're better because Alhambra bought Almansa out and they improved that product, which was suspect before. And when I say suspect, I mean I looked at Almansas like 15, 20 years ago. They weren't very nice, in my opinion. But they've been improved because they were bought up by someone who cares and has improved them. I actually, most Epiphones I've tried have been good. Can't say I found a bad Epiphone, and that's owned by Gibson. So those of you who think I hate American products, not true. I usually give a lot of American names a hard time because I just think they're overpriced for what else is out there of comparable or better value. So I'm trying to help you save money and get something just as good or better. Breedlove. Breedlove, you have to be careful. I got mine in 2017, one of the nicest and best sounding guitars I've ever had. Still have it. But the ones I've tried lately, they're still okay, but they're not, ooh, knock your socks off like mine was. So there I would say you have to be careful, and I think that's because Kim Breedlove is no longer involved in the company. So, you know, what's in a name? You have to check this stuff out. PRS, they're pricey, but I can't knock them. They're well made. Gretsch is just okay. I've never played one that knocks my socks off. In fact, I think you can get much better guitars for less money. Gibsons, again, some are okay, some are nice, and some are bad. So, you know, with Gibson you have to be careful. You know, if you know what you're looking for and it sounds good to you, that's fine. Same with Martin. Martins I think have an undeserved reputation as great because a lot of their guitars are just mediocre. I'm not saying they're bad, but they're not great. I've played some good ones, some mediocre ones, and some bad ones. So that's all I'll say about Martin. Fender, the same. Most Fender basses I've played have been really good. Most Fender Electrics have been okay. And unfortunately, some of the more expensive Fenders and Gibsons, I will say, that I've played have been disappointed because I found the ones made by their Mexican or other factories are actually better built. So again, you know, with the bigger the corporation, I believe, or a company, the more careful you have to be. I'm not saying you can't get a good one or even a great one, but you have to really look at them more critically. I think I mentioned Fender. Most Fenders I've played are okay. Not familiar really with the Squier, and so I won't talk about them. Taylors, I personally don't like the guitars. I don't like their expression system. So, you know, we all have our biases. My bias is I don't like their pickup system. I think it sucks. Aside from that, I've seen some really nicely built ones, some that sound okay. I'm just not a fan, so don't let that dissuade you if you really like a Taylor and it seems to suit you. But there are much better pickup systems out there. Cole Clark, I've never seen a good one. I mean, sorry. I've only seen good ones. I haven't seen a bad one. And that's what I highly recommend if you're a performing guitarist, acoustic guitarist. That is by far the best proprietary system you can have. It just sounds super plugged in like it should. It's just, they don't use too much finish. Kind of some might consider a niche guitar, but they're very, very well built and they sound beautiful. So, most Courts I've tried have been good. Same with Alvarez and Stonebridge. So I hope that helps. That's quite a few names, but that's what I consider what's in a name. So, what's in a name? Oh, and of course Boucher. They're excellent. Well, Boucher should be good. They start around $5,000. But that doesn't always necessarily mean the problem with don't associate brand with price. I mean, it's okay, high-end guitars. I'm not talking about really independent luthiers here either, because I haven't had much experience with them. But generally speaking, those brands I mentioned, you'll probably find something good there in your price range. So what's in a name? A name. Take it as a jump-off point, right? I mean, but you always have to look into what's actually going on in the company now. If you're getting a new one, if you're getting an older one, it would help. And you just have to do some research and find out. Okay, this was made, and if you can find out when it was made, well, who was at this company in that department at in 2012 or 2000 or whatever. And also check out not just necessarily my videos, but if you're interested in a guitar, type in that thing on Google and look at as many reviews as you can of that instrument, and hopefully from around that time frame, okay, that it was made, and that should help you get something good, right? Wiedersehen.